Like many names in the Silent Hill series, the choice of name for this character was almost entirely random, and yet Kaufmann's name is rife with meaning. It's a German surname which can be translated to mean merchant, a businessman, selling goods to others. And what is Kaufmann if not a peddler of illicit drugs? He may not sell them directly, but he certainly benefits from them monetarily. But more interesting than his last name is his first, Michael, a name shared with the divine archangel of Abrahamic myth, meaning who is like God, the highest of angels, a warrior of the Lord who threw Satan into the pit. A strangely powerful and holy name for a man so obviously selfish and unkind. And yet, is it not Kaufmann that smites the devil? Without him, Dahlia's god is born and quickly killed, but only with his aid is Harry able to save his child. Kaufmann is a fascinating figure, and the random yet surprisingly meaningful choice of name encapsulates him perfectly. The only other male character in the game, Kaufmann is in many ways a foil to Harry. His colors are drab and dark, monotone, giving him a cold feeling. While he is a doctor, he's not physically characterized as one. In fiction, doctors are often seen as kind and empathetic, which Kaufmann isn't, which is why his character doesn't appear as one. There's no white coat, no stethoscope around his neck. It's a deliberate choice that makes him look far more like a businessman, standoffish and uncaring. When he's first met, he shoots at Harry, immediately characterizing him as a possible threat. And even when he stands down, he's not friendly. He doesn't care about Harry's concerns, his safety, or his lost daughter. Even Dahlia, who is nearly incomprehensible in cutscenes, at least appears to care about Cheryl, given she's trying to help Harry. Kaufmann doesn't even pretend. Yet Harry's success hinges upon Kaufmann's survival. If the player does not seek him out in Annie's bar, Kaufmann dies, and the best endings of the game are lost. Saving him does not endear you to him. Kaufmann is as abrupt and emotionless as ever, always carrying his briefcase. According to the novelization, it contains money, a passport, and other things he'd need to flee the country. It also characterizes him. He's a businessman, first and foremost, and the way he clings to the briefcase reinforces that idea. The work he did with the cult was a business deal, after all. He provided the drugs and earned a cut in return. Yet clearly, this didn't extend to trusting Dahlia or the cult, as Kaufmann kept not one but 2 files of Aglaophotis, just in case. In case of what? Well, who knows? It doesn't seem as if Kaufmann knew much of what the cult really intended, as he says as much in the ending of the game. But it's possible he had some idea of the magic powers the cult was capable of, and that the Aglaophotis could refute that power. Either way, it was leverage, and he was too shrewd a businessman not to hang on to it, and too smart not to have a backup. He treats other relationships as business exchanges as well. Lisa's exchange of drugs for her use in protecting Alessa in the basement, for instance. Everything with Kaufmann is some kind of deal, and it all comes back to the heart of his character, a lack of empathy. When he does come to the rescue at the end of the game, it's not to help save the world or Harry and his child. He says it himself. No one double-crosses him. It's personal. He wants to stop Dahlia because she betrayed him. What was that betrayal? We don't know all the details, since we don't know what Dahlia promised Kaufmann in return for his help. Whatever it was, it's clear they had a falling out. That Kaufmann did not, in fact, want the world the god summoned. And why would he? What kind of business can he manage in a hellish wasteland full of monsters? Money has no power here, and power and money are 2 of the only things he cares about. It's clear, given how he dismisses Harry and doesn't try to help him or his child. It's clear in how he treats Lisa, and presumably allows her to descend into madness and death. Yet he is the reason Harry can save even a part of his child. He does help the hero, and in a way helps save the world, but for entirely selfish reasons. He is pitted against Dahlia, the true evil, and put in a position where the player can choose to help him, despite the fact Kaufmann didn't help us. A similar dynamic exists in Silent Hill 3, which, as the true sequel to the first game, contains a lot of the same themes and ideas. In 3, the true villain is Claudia, the devout believer in God, who will do anything for that God. But there is a lesser villain, Vincent, the selfish realist, who isn't interested in summoning God, but who certainly doesn't care about Heather either. Much like Kaufmann, Vincent helps the hero to help himself, and ends up dying due to his own selfishness. Silent Hill creates an interesting message with this dynamic. Religious fanaticism is presented as the worst kind of evil. And yes, while Dahlia is different from Claudia, both were religious fanatics. Claudia did want to help others and is far more sympathetic, but Dahlia did believe in God too, and wanted to summon God, if only so she could consolidate her own power in doing so. Against religious fanaticism, other evils are lesser evils. This theme runs through the early Silent Hill games. Horrible characters are somewhat redeemed or given more leniency if they are not religious fanatics. Richard Braintree is one example, but Vincent and Kaufmann are the best examples. They are bad, selfish people who are presented at times as aids to the heroes, even performing heroic deeds. But they perform these deeds for the wrong reasons, which is why they still die in the end. Because while being selfish is a far less evil than fanaticism, it is still evil. Kaufmann's death is incredibly poetic. Lisa's bloody figure rises from the fires below the grates to drag him down, and both her behavior and the imagery surrounding them is very indicative of hell. It's quite clearly implying his fate. Death at her hands, and condemnation as someone deserving of hell. Lisa's relationship with Kaufmann is quite interesting. Harry and the player had presumably said goodbye to the woman, her tragic and mysterious ending having come earlier in the level. Yet here she is, seemingly capable of appearing whenever she'd wanted to. Harry barred her in the room, yet she did not force her way through, or reappear to him, as it seems she could have. Instead, she lay in wait for Kaufmann to let down his guard. But why? After her sorrow at realizing her true fate, why did she return? For revenge, of course, on the man who at the least abused her in life, and possibly was the cause of her death. The theme comes across as quite similar to many folk stories in Japan, especially those concerning female ghosts, the yurei or onryo, who are tied to this world by their grief after being betrayed or killed, and are only set free after achieving revenge. I've one last thing to discuss, an idea which is less about interpreting the game and more a personal theory of mine. Kaufmann is one of the only male characters in the first Silent Hill game. Besides Harry, he is the only one. Who, then, is Alessa's father? Dahlia appears to not be married, and given her, everything, I can imagine why. Yet Alessa exists. It's possible that her birth was some form of magic, but I don't think that's the case. Why would it be? The natural method would be far simpler. And there's many reasons for Dahlia to want to have a kid. You need an heir when you have power and authority after all. But who would she go to for this? Why not a man already embroiled in her unethical dealings, who she has some power and influence over, who's useful to her? Is Kaufmann Alessa's father? There's no real evidence for it, but personally I find it compelling, and how tragic, to have both parents in Alessa's life be so cruel.